Before we review B.R.A.G.G.A.S, we have to understand where B.R.A.G.G.A.S stands in the marketplace itself. B.R.A.G.G.A.S is a point-and-click adventure game. But what is an adventure game? Adventure games are interactive stories. Back in the early days of computing, there were text adventures where the player would use text, type text in a text parser in order to interact with the computer, typing in different verbs and different objects. This was a very limited way to play the games. Things like open door, you could type in open door, or get key would be what you would type in, but many times players would be confused as to which verbs were available and which objects were also activatable. Let's look at some of the key players in the adventure game industry. First, LucasArts. LucasArts released games like Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle, Grim Fandango, The Secret of Monkey Island, and Full Throttle. These games were created by men like Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer. Sierra Online was also a very large player, a much larger, I believe, player in the marketplace. And they were makers of such games as the King's Quest series or Space Quest, Gabriel Knight. In these games, players were given more simplified control. The adventure games of the 90s simplified the text parser into a set of maybe 4 or 5 different actions. In Space Quest, you had movement, sight, your hands, speaking to somebody, using your nose, and using your tongue. Now, in the Space Quest series, they had these extra ones for comedy purposes, but simplifying the text parser really opened up the games and really allowed them to have more personality. Simplified controls, beautiful art, and fantastic sound created a beautiful and enchanting environment for players to get into and made adventure games one of the most popular games of the early 90s. So, how do you play an adventure game? In adventure games, we are given our actions, and we use our actions to move through the world and to interact with it. So, one of the first things you should do is to explore the world, to go to every place that you can, and to speak to everybody that you can, to get everything that you can, because you also have an inventory. And in your inventory, you'll have a bunch of sometimes seemingly random objects, but they will all serve a purpose in the game. They will not really give you many superfluous items in any adventure game. You have to be very creative on how to use these items, and you might have to find things that you'll use much later in the game. So hold on to them and keep them in mind when you're tackling new problems and being presented with new obstacles. Many of these games had fantastic stories and art, memorable music, and were capable of sparking imagination, wonder, and intellectual stimulation. With their accomplishment, they were also hindered by a few problems which I believe limit the entire genre. So let's talk about these. Number 1, getting stuck. Sometimes in adventure games you cannot progress anymore and seem to have exhausted all of your options. Back before the interwebs, this problem brought progress to a crashing halt. The only options when you were stuck were to restart the game and comb through each scene, hoping to find that one pixel you may have missed, or to buy a cheat book or call the 900 tip line and pay like a couple of dollars a minute. Many of these games had nasty dead ends and puzzles that were really difficult to figure out. Number 2, illogical puzzles. This is also part of getting stuck, but sometimes you would get stuck because you didn't look around enough, you didn't talk to everybody, but sometimes you get stuck, you have talked to everybody, but a solution to a puzzle does not make any sense at all. And I'm going to give you an example. In King's Quest V, you're questing around a small town and you're doing random things. It's seemingly random, but part of it, in this period of time, you learn that you need to go through the mountains to continue your quest. And so what you do is you get prepared. So you get your cloak, you get a sled, and you scare away a snake that's guarding your path. And after you get onto this path and you're starting to go into the mountains, you get cold, you put your cloak on, you feel like you've done something, and then around a corner you get jumped by a Yeti. A Yeti just runs at you, and takes you down. Now, My issue with the Yeti is not that you didn't expect it, but it's how do you defeat the Yeti? Now, you think you have this giant snow monster that is attacking you. What do you do? Let me ask you, what do you do? You would think about, you know, I'd use a weapon or run away or, you know, do something like that, but you don't have any weapons. You're King Graham. You never really have a weapon. You always have random stuff in your pockets and find out ways to MacGyver your way through a situation. So basically, the solution to this is really stupid. You can go to the baker in the game and give him a coin for a pie, a custard pie, and it doesn't make any sense why you would need a pie. And you know, what do you do with a pie? You can eat a pie. There's a couple of different ways to lose this pie. And so, for example, if I think, oh, King Graham is hungry, I'm going to feed him this pie, and then I go up to the mountains, guess what? I can't get past the Yeti anymore because I can't buy any more pies because I was hungry. I got the munchies, ate a pie. These types of dead ends are what really kept the games from doing better. And it's amazing really that they did as well as they did, because the story and art would sell the game to players, and they'd play for a little while and then stop playing. Once they got to these points, they either stopped playing or they would find a way to cheat, to go and, you know, buy a cheat book with the multicolored papers, to ask somebody else that's played, or to call the tip line. That this is not really an acceptable way to present a game and to go through a game. But these problems will still exist now. Every puzzle-based adventure game that has puzzles as a plot device will eventually run into this, unless it's, you know, incredibly hand-holdy and tells you what to do. People are not going to be able to figure out puzzles. It's just that simple. So another thing that holds back is the game design. Number 3, game design. Okay, I'm not trying to nitpick about good or bad adventure game design, but how a strongly narrative dependent game is inherently limited and will never reach mass appeal or the numbers like the big shooters, because those games are reflex games. They're reflexive games. They're action games, more like a sport. And these games are intellectual exercise, entertainment, and stimulation. It's completely different markets. And even if you look at these types of markets, there are more people that are interested in physical activities, because it seems to be that the more people can get involved in it, and then intellectual activities. Dependence on narrative also discourages multiple playthroughs. Even if the player enjoys the story, it's not a game that they'll be playing every day for a couple of months. It's a game that you play once through. If you really like it, maybe you'll play it again, and then you'll put it on your shelf and then wait for a time that you feel it is appropriate to replay the game. And replaying these games can be fun because you will forget all of the puzzles. Let's compare any adventure game, even the longest adventure game, the most difficult adventure game you can find, to a game like Skyrim. Now, I know it's not an apples and apples comparison, but let's just look at time and investment. With a game like Skyrim, you can put down $60 now. Even when it comes out, $60 for that game. People have put thousands of hours into that game. Some people have put a ridiculous amount of time into that game and modded it and all these different things, versus an adventure game which has a fantastic, very well made story, but maybe at the best lasts around 10 hours. And a lot of game designers will add in well, they used to do this, I don't know if they'll do this anymore, but they used to add in really difficult puzzles only to drag out time. And sometimes it was just seemingly pointless and annoying and really not enjoyable even to solve the puzzle, because it had nothing to do with advancing the story. It was just put it there to hinder you, to slow down time and to make sure that you put more hours into the game.
Adventure games are not dead.
Point-and-click adventure games still exist today, and they never really died. They just never really grew. LucasArts cleaned house after Grim Fandango's grim sales, and many left and created new studios, including Telltale Games and Double Fine Productions. Telltale continued making adventure games immediately after leaving LucasArts, eventually releasing the Tales of Monkey Island, and the popular Walking Dead series. The Walking Dead series is a point-and-click adventure with quick-time elements in it. So instead of really difficult puzzles to push the narrative, they would have short action sequences that would have a very dramatic effect, and you can choose maybe sometimes it's choosing between one person, saving one person and the other, and this had a noticeable effect on the narrative, even if it was only cosmetic. B.R.A.G.Ga.S is not Double Fine Productions' first adventure game. They have made other adventure games, but not a point-and-click adventure game. In a recently released game called The Cave, made by Ron Gilbert, the adventure game godfather, if you want to say, the man who pretty much created the genre, created a game called The Cave, and it's very much an adventure game where it's a puzzle-based game, but instead of pointing and clicking, you move around like you would in a 2D platformer. Now, B.R.A.G.Ga.S is a classic point-and-click adventure, and we got to talk about it in a different light, because not only is it kind of the rebirth of the point-and-click genre, or at least a rejuvenation of it, it's also one of the first multi-million-dollar crowdfunded games to come out, and so it's going to have a very strong critical eye on it. In February 2012, Double Fine Productions kicked off a new project, a point-and-click adventure game. They asked for $300,000, but they ended up getting funded in less than 9 hours and totaling over $3.3 million at the end of their month-long campaign. This had a ripple effect on the game industry, inspiring other developers to announce new projects and to bring back dying genres. Games like Wasteland 2, Project Eternity, Elite, Dangerous, and the crowdfunding of Star Citizen are a testament to the crowdfunding process's successes in the year 2012. In the 2 years of development, Two Player Productions have been producing a fantastic series of documentaries that really go into the development process at Double Fine. They show the issues that this team faces working on a tight budget, as well as how the company at large tries to stay afloat. This alone was worth the price of admission. Early backers paid anywhere from $15 and up to back the game. Late backers were given an option to join at $30, but they are given the same access that the $15 backers were in the original campaign. B.R.A.G.Ga.S is more than just a game summoning the love of the bygone age of adventure game prominence. It's the first multi-million-dollar crowdfunded game trying to prove to us, the individual, that crowdfunding is a viable method to fund high-quality games. So, how has it done? B.R.A.G.Ga.S is a thoroughly delightful game with beautiful art that inspires a storybook-like feeling. It's very enchanting as well when it's accompanied by fantastic atmospheric music that's moving and just beautiful sounding. The writing and the voice acting are outstanding and got me quite fond of a few characters, as well as made me chuckle throughout Act 1. B.R.A.G.Ga.S plays almost exactly like a classic point-and-click adventure game. Unlike most adventure games, there is no cinematic introduction, just a screen where you can select either the girl, Valoria, or Vela, or Shay, the boy. Valoria is a young girl that lives in a town called Sugar Bunting, a town of warriors that have become bakers. Monsters called Mogs travel through the lands, devouring young maidens in return for not attacking the towns. Valoria has been chosen to be a sacrifice for Mog Chothra. Shay is a very young man on a spaceship. He is given very infantile tasks, and his surroundings in the spaceship makes it look as if it were a giant toddler's playpen. Shay is trying to break out of this childish routine that's protecting him, and to live a life of more danger, more consequence. The writing is very strong in this game, and the presentation is top-notch across the board, with art that makes you feel as if you're walking through the warm, soft, and welcoming paintings. The live orchestrated music, which can be playful and dangerous sounding when it needs to, mostly provides quiet, contemplative music that enhances the feeling of wonder in exploring these ethereal paintings. The voice acting is quite excellent all around. I found that I've gotten quite attached to a few of the characters and hope to see more of them in Act 2.
I'm just messing. messing with you.
While delivering a storybook-like environment, does the game fall into the same pitfalls all adventure games do? Yes and no. Die-hard adventure game fans may feel that the puzzles are a little too easy, while novices may get stuck on the same simple puzzles. As an experienced adventure gamer, I ran into about 3 spots in Maryloft alone, where I got kind of stuck. But I was able to find a solution after a short time and was quickly rewarded with a new item, new clues, or more of the charming story and art. Broken Age is a puzzle game, and they still require patience. If you like adventure games, by all means, you should be playing Broken Age. If you haven't played an adventure game before, then Broken Age is a great place to start, because the puzzles are very simple, they're very straightforward, and they're very logical. The art is gorgeous, and it's made by a veteran adventure game maker in the industry. So he does a very good job of making great puzzles and very fantastic, very funny stories. If you've played adventure games before and have run into some issues, then I would suggest that Broken Age is actually the game to get you back into the genre, because this game is very accessible. So this is one of the best adventure games in terms of accessibility that I've played in a while. You owe yourself to give it a try. And if you get stuck, remember, check your inventory, try to combine items, take breaks. It's a fun game. Have some patience. I'll check you guys later. Neff of the B.R.A.G.G.A.S signing out. Peace.